I've been tagged to talk about the execution of a warrant for TV licensing by Chili John Carney. If you don't know who that is, I'll link him in the description below. Go ahead and check him out and subscribe. So I'm going to talk about the video that he's asked me for my opinion on in this video. Not that this can be taken as legal advice, of course, you know that by now. But nonetheless, I'll give you my opinion on the video on the execution of that warrant, what I think about what the various people within that video say, and as usual, I'll give you an overview of the law on how the execution of a warrant for TV licensing works. Stay tuned. So welcome back to the channel. Many of you are interested in TV licensing and how it works. Although in the poll that I did just recently, quite a number of you voted on that poll, and still the numbers remained somewhat the same. I'm actually just going to pull that poll up for you because I think that's going to be interesting to take a look at. So let's move to that first of all. No, that's the video. That's the wrong one. Let's move to this slide with the poll. So here, 20,000 of you voted on this poll. 49% of you don't pay the TV license. And I was interested in the split between those that do and the reasons. The 18% of you said that you pay, but only out of the fear of prosecution. 9% of you said that you pay, but you're not sure if you really need one. And 24% said you do pay because you do watch live TV or whatever. So I thought that was quite an interesting split. So I just thought I'd cover that since we're talking about TV licensing. So as I said, this video, I'm talking about the execution of a warrant video and what I think of it. So let's move to that video now, and I'll let you know my thoughts pretty much live because I haven't watched this video before. I've seen it before, as in I've seen the video pop up before, but I haven't watched the full thing, let alone comment on it properly. So let's take a look now.
Morning. Just to let you know before I start talk, I'm recording what is going on for your purposes.
Yes,
and my purposes.
We're doing exactly the same, so we're open and honest.
Right.
Right, so just to pause there right off the bat, clearly an officer is present with the TV licensing people, and the author of the video has said that he's recording, and the officer immediately said, we're doing the same, we're recording. Both of which are perfectly fine, both of which are perfectly legal. And even right off the bat, just to go straight to a bit of the law to explain this, the execution of a warrant may be with or without constables present. So it says here, either alone or in the company of one or more constables. So we'll come back to that in more detail in a moment, but let's go back to the video.
Morning. Just to let you know before I start talk, I'm recording what is going on for your purposes.
Yes,
and my purposes.
We're doing exactly the same, so we're open and honest.
Right.
Should we go inside and have a chat then, sir?
I'm not going inside. I'll stay here and talk to you guys.
Right.
Right, so straight away the officer said let's go inside and talk. The warrant is obviously for access to the premises, and the author has said he wants to stay outside and talk. Immediately there are some implications, but I'll come back to those in a minute. Let's go through the video first.
Can I ask you first of all, what's your name and what station you dispatch from and why are you here?
I'm PC Edwards from Welling Police Station, Sussex Police. We're here with the TV licensing, who are executing a warrant at your address.
So a clear and concise explanation by the police officer, perfectly polite, perfectly reasonable, telling the author exactly why they are there. They are there to accompany the TV licensing to execute a warrant. He's given his name, given his number, and his police station. So in my view, so far, perfectly reasonable.
And we're here to assist them. If you want to come and speak to the TV license guy, he can explain a bit more. He's got some questions for you.
Right, I'd rather speak to him in the public here.
He also needs to test your television.
I do not consent for this man to go inside my property.
Right.
Okay, just pausing there. There is a duty under Section 366 of the Communications Act to assist in the execution or provide all assistance that is reasonable. We'll come back to that in a moment. And by refusing to go inside the property, he's already committing an offence. As I said, I'll come back to that in a moment.
There's a warrant, okay, that gives them and us a power to enter the address.
Can I see the warrant?
Yeah, of course, it's got inside.
I am not going inside. I want to see the warrant here. Why are you saying keep on going inside? Mr. TV license man, can you just, for the record, can you just identify yourself, tell me what company you're from and why are you here today? Can I see some ID, please?
Yes. There's a copy of your warrant, so it's for you, it's your copy.
That doesn't look like a warrant that's signed by a judge.
It is a warrant, sir.
PC, can I ask you a question, PC? The reason...
Obviously, we can't see this warrant, so I can't comment on the warrant itself, but I would reasonably trust that it is a warrant and it's been given to the police officer. The questions that this author has about the warrant are unfounded. He seems to be suggesting that it needs to be signed by a judge. It's not always a judge, the distinction being a magistrate or justice of the peace, as they are also referred, may sign a warrant. And by sign, it doesn't mean in pen or with ink. It can just mean typed onto the warrant electronically, and it might even just say Justice of the Peace. But let's watch on and see what he says.
Why you're here is...
I've explained to you why I'm here.
Yeah, just to make sure
this
that...
gentleman's going to show you the ID. Okay, and then he's going to ask
Yes, I do understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So I take it as...
Do you want to take that in your hand, or do you want me to leave it in the address?
I take this as you're not here to take side with neither this gentleman nor not me.
I'm not taking sides.
So you are here to...
make sure the warrant is executed at the address and make sure everything is kept calm.
Right.
Okay.
Can I ask you, why is that warrant come and not in a envelope and
It's not in an envelope. We don't put them in envelopes. Now,
so just pausing there, author asks why it hasn't arrived in an envelope. That's just a bit of a silly question, really, with respect. There's no need for a warrant to be in an envelope, unless it's obviously being posted out. There's no reason for it to be in an envelope. And again, the police officer remains calm. At the moment, everybody's calm, but let's keep watching.
So who you're referring to? This warrant supposed to come by a judge, seal. This doesn't look like a warrant.
It is a warrant, trust me, I'm a police officer.
And this is a warrant that's signed by a judge.
Would you like it?
Can you just answer the question? Is this a warrant,
it is a warrant
that's signed by a judge?
By court.
By a judge?
Because we're going around the circle.
It's signed by a Justice of the Peace.
The Justice of the Peace?
Yes, sir.
No, I need a warrant before you guys enter my property.
Okay.
I need a
So
warrant
you're
from
saying
the judge.
We don't have any act.
Okay, so the issue here clearly is that the author doesn't accept that a warrant signed by a Justice of the Peace is a valid warrant. Now, any warrant signed in the name of the court, which could be by a magistrate, Justice of the Peace, or by a judge, is an order of the court, and is a warrant is a type of order of the court. It's an order to provide the power of search. That's what a warrant is. It doesn't have to be signed by a judge at all. This appears to be the confusion by the author at the moment, although still remaining calm, but with respect, quite misconceived as the idea as to by whom this has to be signed and how. But let's keep watching.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Without my consent, you guys cannot enter the property.
And that's fundamentally untrue. The whole point of a warrant is to grant access to the premises. His consent is not required, and they do not need to seek his consent if they have a warrant. The whole purpose of a warrant, which I'll come back to when I look at the law, is to grant access to the premises. Let's watch on.
Hastings
If you
Magistrates
just
Court.
leave this to the gentleman, I'll put it through his letterbox.
Does he want to answer your questions?
You don't want to answer any questions that I may have?
First of all, you haven't identified yourself to me. Can I see some ID? And I ask you, what company do you dispatch from to come here?
I work for TV licensing. Have you got your ID as well? We work for TV licensing, we work for Capita, and that's on behalf of the BBC for enforcement of TV licensing.
Right, so why do I need a TV license?
You need a TV license because you were seen to be operating a TV live when last we called.
Right.
You were watching a sports programme at the time when our last...
On YouTube.
Oh, was it you?
Anyway, can I ask you, have I...
So just pausing there, obviously the officer here, the TV licensing agent or officer here is providing the reason that they have the warrant, and that's that this author has been seen watching a sports program on TV. Now, remember, that doesn't have to be definitive proof or evidence. That's the point of the warrant, to determine decisively whether live TV is being watched at the premises. The mere fact that he'd been seen watching something was clearly enough for them to get a warrant. Now, he said it was on YouTube. That doesn't necessarily mean it was live, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't. If it was live and there's a suspicion that it was live, then that was clearly enough for them to get a warrant. But let's continue.
Have I invite you inside my front room so me and you sit down and watch television together?
No, you haven't.
So how do you know I watch BBC and the rest of the station inside
We
it?
were taking it from the guy who called before who said you were watching live TV on your...
And that is his word. Have I ever, this guy tell you that I invite him inside my house so me and him sit down and watch TV
I
together?
saw it from the...
Why-
I'm just speaking with this gentleman,
that's why
PC.
we'd
Can
like
you
to
just wait?
ask you the questions.
Yeah, you're here just to assist this man. I'm speaking to this man now. So you are here, so make sure this man don't breach the peace or me don't breach the peace. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
He said he saw the TV from the window.
He saw the TV from the window.
Yes, he
Can
saw
you,
from the door.
from the window,
From the door.
through that blind?
He said he saw the window through the door. I'll read. Do you want me to read out what he said?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
of course, yeah. It's no secret.
So clearly this is within the paperwork of the application for the warrant. He's obviously got the paperwork here with him.
Just hold that. It's the customer.
Yeah, of course.
And-
You want to put that on the table, please?
No, I'm not accepting no farmer documentation. I do not consent to that, PC. So just to let you know,
Put it through the desk.
I do not consent to it. So you can do what you like.
So at the moment he's saying he doesn't consent to receiving the paperwork, and yet he asked for a record of what was said. So I don't understand the reasoning to refuse this documentation when he's asked for what was said, which this officer was about to produce. But let's continue.
This gentleman over here, can I ask you why are you here and why are you standing in my property without my consent?
Here to serve a search warrant on your premises.
Can I see some form of identification? I didn't see that. For the record, can I just see that name?
You don't need to video my ID card. I've
Well,
shown
you're on my property, so I'm going to ask you nicely if you could stand up out here.
There's quite an important point here, actually, because recording this video by the author, the officer producing the ID has quite rightly said, justifiably said, that he doesn't want his ID being videoed because it's quite clear that a lot of these videos end up online, and so in my view it was quite justified in not allowing that to be recorded on video. If the author had recorded that ID visible, legible to broadcast online, that could amount to a misuse of personal information, and that in itself can amount to an offence. But let's continue.
Fair enough.
We're in the
Thank you very much.
So look, I'll tell you what was actually said. All right? Okay, I can read it for you here. You did say at the time you don't want your contract. I'm not interested. Our officer replied, sorry sir, but if you wish to use a TV set for live programmes by law, you need a TV licence. The male replied, what law? I replied, the Communications Act 2003. The male replied, this act is not a law. Do you stand by what you said there?
Yes.
So he's read out a conversation about watching live TV, needing a licence, and the officer said that the author had claimed that the act is not a law, which is obviously not true. But let's continue.
I would like you guys to take me to court and prove to the judge that I watch TV inside my house, because I never invite none of you guys inside my front room. So therefore, if you can prove to me today, show me some kind of evidence that I watch TV inside my house, please do so.
Well,
Okay,
this
we
is the
can't provide
point.
You can't provide that. So why are you
That
here then?
happened at the
So
time.
you are here under some
Evidence
false
is
claims.
purely from what our officer actually said at the time.
So that's the evidence. What his word is the evidence.
We have taken his word because he's an experienced officer.
Okay, I understand. You guys need to prove that to the judge.
All right,
So
okay.
yeah. So
All right.
take me to court.
All right, thank you very much.
You guys have a nice day.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we'll withdraw this to the court. No, that is it, because you won't be answering any more questions if I have.
I will not. Take me to court and prove to the judge that I watch television in there. It's that simple. If you guys can
Thank you
do
for
so,
your
then.
courtesy.
Morning. Just.
Okay, that appears to be the end of the video. I think this is just a repeat for some reason. So that's the video. A few general comments first of all. At least they all remained calm. You'd expect that from the police officer and from TV licensing, but at least also the author remained calm. Now, it appears at the end of that video that the TV licensing decided to withdraw because it's their policy not to create a scene and force an entry. However, that does create a misconception as to what they are permitted to do with the execution of that warrant. And there are also potential repercussions for the author of the video for not complying and not acceding to the warrant's power. And that's when I'm going to come to the law. So just as a warning, first of all, to those that have watched that video and watched it here, maybe watched it on Chili John Carney's channel, if you believe that this is always how it's going to go and that's the end of the matter, then be warned that that is not necessarily the end of the matter. Just because they had a policy to withdraw and not force an entry to the premises at that moment in time doesn't mean that that's the end of the matter. And for that, I'll take you now to the law. So the Communications Act 2003. And just to dispel silly myths, an act of law is primary legislation enacted by the Westminster Parliament, the supreme lawmaking body in this country, and one of which is, of course, the Communications Act 2003. Governs many different things, including TV license. Section 366 is the power to enforce TV licensing. Of course, a license being required to watch or record live TV or use BBC iPlayer on any device, and a license is therefore required. Now, a warrant can be obtained if it says here either a lay magistrate in Northern Ireland, Justice of the Peace, England and Wales, or a sheriff in Scotland is satisfied by information on oath that there are reasonable grounds for believing any one of the following. Forgive me, this is a conjunctive. So all of the following three. So firstly, that an offence under Section 363 has been or is being committed. That is, of course, an offence of watching TV without a licence. Secondly, that evidence of the commission of that offence is likely to be on the premises specified in the information or in a vehicle so specified, and that one or more of the conditions set out down here is satisfied. We'll come back to those in a minute. If so, then he may grant a warrant under this section. Secondly, a warrant under this section is a warrant authorising one or more persons authorised for the purpose by the BBC or by Ofcom to enter the premises or vehicle at any time, either alone or in the company of one or more constables, which is why you saw a police officer here, and to search the premises or vehicle and examine and test any receiver equipment found. Now, the conditions to be satisfied in order for this warrant to be issued and executed, those conditions are, broadly speaking, that a warrant is necessary, but they're set out in more detail here. So, first of all, is one or more of these, so any one of these. So, first of all, that no person entitled to grant entry to the premises, usually the owner or vehicle, with whom it's practicable to communicate. Secondly, that there's no person entitled to grant access to the evidence with whom it's practicable to communicate. In other words, the person's not there. Thirdly, that entry to the premises or the vehicle will not be granted unless a warrant is produced. So clearly the author of this video is not allowing access to the premises, notwithstanding that there is a live warrant. Fourthly, that the purpose of the search may be frustrated or seriously prejudiced unless the search is carried out by a person who secures entry immediately upon arrival to the premises or the vehicle. In other words, the person that lives there or owns the vehicle is going to dispose of evidence, remove evidence, and otherwise frustrate the search and prevent officers from finding evidence of the contravention of Section 363. Now, so any one of those is likely to be satisfied. So either the persons or personal persons are not there to grant entry or to grant access to the evidence. Entry to the premises will not be granted unless a warrant is produced, or that it's going to be frustrated or prejudiced. In other words, they're going to prevent the officer from finding the relevant evidence they need. Now, having got to the point where a warrant will be issued and can be executed. There's various other things in here. However, this section here is relevant. A person authorised by the BBC, so it doesn't have to be a BBC employee. It can be an agent or a company working on behalf of BBC or by Ofcom. To exercise a power conferred by a warrant under this section may, if necessary, use such force as may be reasonable in the execution of that power. So in black and white, under section 366, subsection 6, the agent working for BBC or for Ofcom can use any such force as is reasonable in the exercise of the power of the warrant. In other words, they can use force to enter the premises. The policy appears to be that they don't, because as you saw in this video, the officer decided to withdraw. As I say, that's not necessarily the end of the matter, but on that occasion, at the very least, they decided not to use force as they are permitted to do so under subsection 6 here. Furthermore, where a person has the power of a warrant under this section to examine or test any equipment found on the premises or in a vehicle, it'll be the duty, and here's where the duty arises, it shall be the duty of a person who is on the premises or in the vehicle, and in the case of a vehicle, a person who has charge of it or is present when it's searched, to give the person carrying out the examination all such assistance that the person may reasonably require carrying it out. So there is a duty upon the author of this video to provide all assistance as is necessary and reasonable to allow them to carry out the exercise of that warrant to test and examine any equipment. Now, the next section is why I say that's not the end of the matter. Just because TV licensing decided to withdraw. This is why it's not the end of the matter. This is under subsection 8. A person is guilty of an offence if he intentionally obstructs a person in the exercise of any power conferred on that person by the virtue of a warrant under this section, or without reasonable excuse fails to give any such assistance that is under a duty to give under section 7 above. So if, as in this case, in my opinion, in my view, the author of this video has committed an offence under this section under both of these sections by A, intentionally obstructing them in the exercise of the power of the warrant because he said, I am not going in and you are not going in, I don't consent and not allowing you to go inside. So he refused access to the premises, notwithstanding the existence of a live warrant. And secondly, without reasonable excuse, and by the way, not believing the evidence that they used to obtain the warrant in the first place is not a reasonable excuse, and them not being able to prove it on the spot there and then that he was watching live TV is not a reasonable excuse, because otherwise, what's the purpose of the warrant? The purpose of the warrant is to search and test the equipment, which may or may not prove that he was watching live TV. So whether or not he was watching live TV is still a live issue. They obviously couldn't prove it beyond doubt at that moment, which is why they had a warrant. However, without reasonable excuse, which in my view, he didn't have a reasonable excuse, he failed to give assistance that he was under a duty to give under subsection 7. Therefore, he's guilty of 2 offences, which would be rolled together if this were to go to court and he were prosecuted under this section, which he might well be, which is why it's not the end of the matter. So this author may well be prosecuted for a criminal offence under subsection 8, which is arguably more serious than the original potential offence of watching TV without a licence, because he's now intentionally obstructing a court order for search of the premises, and without reasonable excuse failed to give the assistance that is under a duty to give, a statutory duty. Now, we live in a freedom-based society, but we have various duties that come along with that. We have certain rights and we have certain duties. Certain duties are imposed upon you, whether you like them or not. A duty of care, for example, whilst you're out driving, you have a duty of care to other road users, whether you like it or not. You can't wave away your duty to another road user just because you don't want to. If you're out in a car, you're out on a bicycle, or whatever it might be, you have a duty of care to other road users. And if you breach that duty of care, that's why you can get sued for negligence, because you've breached your duty of care. In this case, you have a duty under subsection 7 to provide all such assistance as is required. And under subsection 8, without reasonable excuse, if you fail to provide that assistance that you're under the duty to give, you commit an offence. And the punishment for that is under subsection 9. A person guilty of an offence under subsection 8 shall be liable on a summary conviction to a fine not exceeding level 5 on the standard scale. And I always have to look this up each and every time, but level 5 on the standard scale, if you just Google, you can bring up these level fines. Level 1 is £200, £500, £1,000. Level 5 is an unlimited fine for offences committed after the 13th of March 2015. Before that, it would have been up to £5,000, which is why I always check what they were. Coming back to here, so a person, in my view, in this video, the author is guilty of both of those subsections A and B under subsection 8 of section 366 of the Communications Act 2003. Therefore, if this person were prosecuted at the discretion of either BBC as a prosecution, or even if it's referred to the police and so on, he might well be prosecuted and would, in my view, based on this video, likely to be found guilty of an offence under this section, and a fine not exceeding level 5 now being an unlimited fine. So the court could impose a fine that it so chooses for the breach of this section. Now, it was not an extremely aggravated offence in that he didn't get angry, he didn't get aggressive, he didn't get violent. It was at most a peaceful protest and refusal. A refusal nonetheless, which still amounts to an offence in my view. So there it is. That is what the law provides. And if any of you watch that video and believe that that's the end of it, they can't enforce the warrant, they just leave and that's it, nothing else happens, that's not necessarily the case. If you were more aggressive than the author of this video, any potential fine that you might receive upon conviction for breach of this section might be more severe. So my guidance to you, if you want to avoid the risk of a criminal prosecution and a fine levied against you, which could be an unlimited fine on level 5, then you ought to comply with the warrant. Now, of course, most people would not like the idea of complying with the search warrant of their premises, but nonetheless, if they have a warrant and they do execute it, as rare as they might be, that's what the position would be. In the case of this video with this author, in my view, having watched it, whilst he did remain calm and wasn't necessarily a breach of the peace in any respect, TV licensing decided to withdraw. He was still in breach of this section because he's intentionally obstructed both the police officer and 2 TV licensing officers in the exercise of their power conferred on them by this warrant in this section, and failed to provide assistance. So most of you by now know my thoughts on TV license and what I think about it in general. My opinions on that don't matter. This video is to explain the law to you and how it applies and how I believe it applies, and my opinion on how it applies in certain situations like this video. So that is, for what it's worth, a practicing barrister's breakdown on the law in this. And just as a brief point, I noticed quite a comical remark in one of my videos just recently. Said, why should we trust you if you're still practicing? Well, practicing doesn't mean I'm not yet fully qualified or a real lawyer or something. A practicing barrister is a barrister who is working as a fully fledged qualified barrister professional, providing legal advice for fees and representing clients in court. We have full rights of audience as a practicing barrister. The practicing bit just means we're working as a barrister. Just as you'll go to the doctor's practice and the doctor is practicing medicine, they're not still learning how to do it, although we always learn, okay? But it doesn't mean we're not a professional, so don't get confused by that. But there we are. I hope you found that interesting. Please do remember to like that video and subscribe. Don't shoot the messenger if you don't like the contents and my conclusions drawn in this video. Those are my conclusions based on the law, based on my qualified and professional legal interpretation of the law and how it applies in this video to this author. So with that, I thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, and I'll see you next time.